bets. If you have a drama and your mates on that side want to have a private meeting, I will facilitate a private meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can't understand why you're here, Senator Heffernan.
You will, in a minute you will.
I'm looking forward to your contribution.
You want to let him...
Okay, on that then, your decision to immediately ground the fleet on the 29th of October, Mr Joyce, was based upon what you referred to as an increased risk profile and the introduction of new human risk factors. What I'm putting to you then, Mr Joyce, were you concerned that Qantas employees would be or would have been a risk to the business?
No, Senator. Again, in the last session, we covered this in great detail, and I'm happy to go through it again, if you wish. We go through the reason for the grounding. And as I mentioned in the last session, we believe that we had three alternatives available to us. We had the alternative of keep on operating the way we were before the grounding, which was a death by 1,000 cuts. That was going to put the air organisation under severe pressure. It was going to continue for months, if not years, as one of the union leaders had said. We had the option of then taking all action of a lockout, and as a consequence of taking that option, grounding the airline. And we had the option of conceding to the unions. As I said previously, the option of conceding to unions, in my view, would have put the organisation at extreme financial risk and would have meant over a period of time that Qantas would not be financially viable and would not be able to operate competitively in the global environment in which we're faced. So we made the decision to bring the action to an end by conducting a lockout. The risk assessment that then took place was once we were going to do the lockout, when was the appropriate time to ground the airline? And it was felt, given the issues around potential distractions, by having a period of time between the announcement of the lockout and the grounding of the airline, that was a risk that we weren't willing to accept. And I said this in my previous testimony, we take a conservative view on all of these items. We were the only airline that grounded the A380s when the engine explosion happened over a year ago. We were the first airline to ground our fleet when the volcanic ash had an impact on us. This is not about us assuming there's anything malicious going to occur. This is us worrying about distractions that could be caused with the announcement taking place. And the longer we left the grounding, the longer the time between the grounding and the lockout, the greater that risk, and that was a risk that we decided not to accept and to minimise, and that's why we grounded the airline when we made the announcement of the lockout.
And when you grounded the airline, I'll just reiterate that there was there any discussion with CASA prior to the announcement?
No, there was discussions with CASA on the ongoing issues that we were facing as an airline, and we did talk to CASA before the public announcement about the grounding, and we did talk to CASA about the reinstatement of the airline on the Monday before it was put back in the air, and we did go through the safety cases of putting the airline back in the air. So there was a lot of dialogue with CASA through this period.
So CASA had to give the all clear, is that correct?
No, for grounding the airline, CASA does not have to give the all clear. For putting the airline back in the air, CASA does have to give the all clear.
Okay, and that did happen when?
On the Monday after when the airline was reinstated. So the order in which it occurred is that I believe over Sunday night into the early hours of morning, Fair Work Australia made its determination. And made its determination to terminate the bargaining period between all three agreements. Then on Monday morning, we made the announcement that we were going to put the airline back in the air as a consequence of that action being terminated, or action being terminated as well. We then had to go to CASA to sit down with them with a safety case to say why it was safe putting the airline back into operation. And I believe sometime in the afternoon on Monday, CASA approved that reinstatement, and by 2 or 3 o'clock, we had the airline operating again.
Okay. All right. Now, I am mindful, very, very mindful of the time. So, Senator Xenophon, I'm going to kick to you because I know that you've got a fair bit, and then as you're asking your questions, I'll just quietly talk to other members of the committee to get some idea of what sort of timing that they need.
Thank you. Mr Joyce, thank you for your opening statement and for your fourth appearance before this committee.
Thanks, Senator.
You said that these amendments would strangle international business there would be significant flow-on effects. What because of the particular in relation to foreign cabin crew being paid Australian rates, what percentage of the cost of operating an airline relate to cabin crew? Not pilots, but the flight attendants.
Off the top of my head, Senator, I'm going to have to take that notice. Our total payroll represents 20 as the group. Total payroll represents 26% of the cost base of the airline, and last year it was the highest component of our cost base for the group.
But in actual cabin crew, I put to you that it would be 1 or 2%, 2 or 3%.
I think, Senator, for an airline to be competitive, it has to be competitive in every area. So we cannot have significant disadvantages in any one area. And the proposal of these bills, as you know, doesn't just affect cabin crew. It would affect maintenance, which is a big component of our costs. It would affect flight operations. It would affect a large element of what the cost base of an airline is.
I'm surprised that you're not aware what percentage of costs to the Qantas Group cabin crew would be.
Well, Senator, we know the overall statistics on it, and this is a big company, and there's a whole series of individual costs that make up the cost base, Senator. And I'm assuming, I'm here answering 200 questions on notice, huge amount of questions about the business.
I'm only asking one question.
I know, and you could pick on one particular item, but we'll take the question under notice. I think it's fair enough to take the question under notice, and for detailed questions like that, you would expect us to take it on notice.
I think Senator Gallagher just gave you a compliment saying you're a mathematician by trade or by training, so in terms of...
That's fair, Senator. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm happy enough to take it on notice. If you want to make a big deal out of it, that's up to you.
No, I'm making a big deal of that. I'm just asking you in terms of, you said dire consequences if cabin crew are paid, those that fly on domestic routes are paid Australian rates, wages and conditions.
Well, I think, Senator, with a couple of things. First of all, what we're talking about is the significant impact this legislation would have on our operation. And our operation does not just cover cabin crew, it covers a huge amount of the cost base. And I think it's fair to say this would cover them. And I think I'll ask Bruce to talk about the implications for Jetstar, because he knows the implications. And we have done the numbers about what it would mean in terms of the Darwin and the Cairns cost base. It would add over $3 million in costs, just for the cabin crew alone, to the cost of Darwin and Cairns, and the routes that are already, as regional centres, unprofitable. It would add a burden on those routes, which would make them uneconomic for us to continue. So the impact is quite severe. And I might ask Bruce to comment on the details.
Yeah, maybe, Senator, let me provide a bit of colour on the... Because I think what we're talking about is the tag flights. 90% of the Jetstar tag flights relate to Darwin. So Darwin's primarily where the tag flights operate. And as I said at the last Senate inquiry, I think I was asked a question about what constitutes the cost base of both cabin crew and tech crew. And I think I said somewhere in the order of 17 or 18% of Jetstar's costs. Now, that's just two labour groups. Cabin crew are by far the largest labour group in our organisation, and they probably constitute, I'd say, around 10%. But you're talking about operations in our business that are the least profitable in our domestic operations. The Darwin route group is the least profitable, the most marginal, and you're talking about a business that makes a margin of somewhere in the high single digits. So something that does impact 10% of the cost base is a significant impact on the economics of that route.
Sure. Can I just, thank you for clarifying that. Can I just go to an article that was written by Steve Critty in the Australian on the 4th of February, headed Jetstar puts cap on domestic routes its foreign crews can fly, that relates to, and I understand that relates to a Fair Work Australia investigation into the issue of using foreign cabin crew. Is that correct? Is that a fair summary?
It's a Fair Work Ombudsman investigation, and there's two of them going on, which we talked about the last, and those two investigations are still ongoing, one into cadets and one into cabin crew.
Right. But as a result of that investigation, there now has been changes in terms of the number of domestic sectors foreign-based crew can fly on international services. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So there has been a change since the last time you were here in terms of the way that foreign crew are rostered on those flights.
Yeah, but the way it works, and provide a little bit more detail, is we have a number of restrictions that we place on our rostering practices for international crew. Primarily, as you imagine, all the labour agreements, all the fatigue things that we've talked about, all the rostering limitations apply. We also have two other limitations, one of which is an international flight number limitation, so international crew can only work on international flight numbers. And in addition, they have to comply with the visa rules, which is a 30-day requirement for them to leave the country. So
Sorry to
that...
interrupt. Sorry, Mr. Buchanan, have you finished that?
No, I've got a bit more. If you-
I'll let you finish. Well, no, I've interrupted now, sorry. Senator Xenophon, just the media are coming in. I just have to ask, Mr. Joyce, do you have any objections? You seem to be very photogenic when you're in this building. They're not looking for us. They're looking for
So
you.
it's not in real life, Senator, it's online photogenic, I thought it was both in real life and on the cameras.
Let me tell you. Well, Mr. Joyce, take this as a compliment because the heads up the front of you aren't photographic, so it's all about you. Are you comfortable?
We're comfortable, yes.
The shade is for the ugly.
I won't even argue with you there, Senator. Sorry, Senator Xenophon. Sorry, Mr. Buchanan, keep going.
Yes, and as I said before, most of our tag flights, about 90% of our tag flights operate through Darwin. And because of the Darwin operations, what was happening is there were some unattended rostering practices where the system was automatically optimising around Darwin, and some people were doing concentrated flying on what are called domestic tag flights. Although the average is still only around 10% of the hours that cabin crew are working, some cabin crew are doing a series of domestic tag flights. And in talking that through with the Fair Work Ombudsman, we've decided that we'd put some limitations on that. So put some additional limitations on the rostering practice so that in addition to international flight numbers, in addition to the hours, in addition to all the other restrictions in the rostering practice, we've also put some limitations on the number of contiguous sectors that people can work on tag flights, and also the number of hours that they can work on tag flights. And in addition to that, because this is it's not about financial gain, what we've gone back and done is paid some additional money to anyone that did work more than 4 contiguous sectors on tag flights in the country during the last 2.5 years.
Okay, so it's fair to say that this review within Jetstar has occurred as a result of the Fair Work Ombudsman investigation?
That's correct.
Right. But these issues were raised by this committee some time ago, so that didn't trigger it. It was the Fair Work Ombudsman investigation that triggered these changes.
Well, I think they were going in parallel. The discussion here was in November. The Fair Work Ombudsman investigation's been going on way before that. I think it started in July or August. So it's a process that's been going on in parallel, discussions here and also discussions with Fair Work Ombudsman. The issue is now that those additional restrictions are in place.
Although that was discussed, I think, on the 25th of February 2011 at the first hearing to do with aviation.
I can't recall that, but I do remember it was discussed in the November session.
Okay. Can I just go to the issue, Mr. Joyce, of the whole issue of Qantas's books about international, in terms of the decisions made by Qantas with respect to the job losses or the redundancies in Australia, and also the expansion into Asia, is as a result of Qantas International losing, you say, a significant amount of money and being unsustainable in terms of its return on capital?
Not all the job losses, Senators. I think we again said in the last session there were some of the job losses that resulted in changes to the international network. We did scale back our operations to London from 4 services, or will be scaling back our operations to London from 4 services to 2 services.
And they'll be picked up by British Airways, won't they?
British Airways will be adding some more extra capacity, but the services are not being picked up by British Airways. In fact, British Airways are taking also one of their services out of Australia from the end of March. They're scaling back as well. So there is reductions in operations to Australia from both carriers. That's because the London route is the biggest loss-making route, and because with the economic situation in Europe, we feel that we need to reduce our exposure to the European market, given the significant deterioration that's likely to take place into the future. Can I say then there are other job losses as a result of change in work practices? For example, as part of the announcements that we made previously, we are closing our catering centre in Bristol Brisbane because a runway is being built through that catering centre. Of taxiways and runways, and we have to build a new catering centre, which is a $75 million state-of-the-art facility that requires less people working there as a result of new technology. And that was part of the announcement that we made at the time. So there's a combination of route changes, network changes as a result of the $200 million losses, but also